the solution. We want you to do this in order to solve the problem. And it moves from what people say development, that you do development for people, as in it's development shouldn't be something that you do to people, but something that they do for themselves, with any support that. Hi, listeners. It's another exciting episode of the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. And we are getting into some exciting discussion today, looking at community engagement in school management. We've always seen running schools and work that happens in school as something that involves the head teacher, the teachers, and the pupils. But we're looking at what other factors are outside the confines of the school or the four walls of the school that are essential for school management, effective school management, for progress, for academic achievement. And so we are delighted to be talking to Ms. Avril Kudzi on community engagement in school management. And we'll get into the discussion pretty shortly after this break. This is the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. Welcome back from that short break. And we would be starting the conversation right away. And we want to start by understanding a little bit more about our guest. I actually first heard of her before meeting her in person. That was from my previous organization where our CEO used to speak very highly of her. So I was very, very interested in knowing who this Avril person is. When I moved back to Ghana, we got to meet in one conference, and she's amazing. So Avril, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Senyo. I always say you give me a lot of credit, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to finally have this conversation with you.
Yes, thanks a lot. So there may be some of our audience who may not know who Avril is, what you do, what the journey has been. So we want to start briefly by introducing yourself, your name and what you do, and then we go into a bit of your background. So do you mind kindly introducing yourself?
Okay, thanks, Senyo. So my name is Avril Kudzi, and the Avril is April in French. I mean, people have various versions of mentioned Avril, whichever goes. And I would say I'm a social development professional. I've been working in this development sector for probably close to about 20 years. So I had varied experience, not just in the education sector, but in other thematic sectors as well.
Yeah, that's nice. And what do you currently do?
Okay, so currently I'm the country lead for the Jacobs Foundation. The foundation is a Swiss family foundation based in Zurich, Switzerland. And I represent them here in Ghana. And their main goal of the Jacobs Foundation is building, their main goal is to improve learning outcomes. But they do that through systemic change architecture. So we're working closely currently with the Ministry of Education and trying to influence how education is delivered, really starting from the grassroots level right up to inform, to help improve learning outcomes of children and transform the system of education in Ghana. So that's what the foundation does. So I'm the country leading the programs in Ghana.
That's nice. I know the Jacobs Foundation briefly. I know they are really big on how practice is shaped by evidence. And I got a chance to be on one of their podcasts recently, talking about evidence in practice. And so I'm excited that we're getting someone who is a country lead in Ghana for an amazing organization like the Jacobs Foundation. Now, let's talk about your journey into working in this space. You mentioned you are a social development professional with close to 20 years of experience working in different sectors. How has the transition been for you? Can you tell us a bit about your background, what you studied, your earlier works, and how that has transitioned you into the work you do now.
Yes, thanks, Senyo. So I must begin by saying that I didn't start off with the mind of, I want to work in this development sector, or I want to be a social development professional, but it's just the trajectory of my career that has landed me here. So I hold a bachelor's degree from the School of, at that time it was called the School of Administration. It's now called the Ghana Business School or University of Ghana. In finance, I have a finance first degree. And then I have a master's, which I did from GIMPA, Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. I always have to think of the acronym, which is in development management. And my master's actually was done several years after working in the development sector. So I must say that my master's was a purposeful decision to do that, because I was working in the sector and I felt I needed more tools and skills to be able to maneuver in the development sector. So that's been my education. But I started my career, if you don't mind me going on, really my first job in this development space, if I should call it, was with USAID Ghana. And I went in as an admin person. As I said, I didn't, I probably didn't even know what development work was all about. I had done administration, and therefore that's finance, and that's the route I was taking.
Yeah.
But working in USAID, I worked there for, I think, close to 14 years, really exposed me to this development work. Mm-hmm. I started in the health office in USAID as an administrative officer, doing the normal administrative stuff, scheduling meetings and all that. Then as I was working, the opportunities in USAID came up that were more development oriented. Yeah. And it piqued my my interest. So I applied for a number of internal vacancies, which sort of moved me out of the admin space into more development. So I remember I applied for, the first one was, there was this US presidential initiative, which was, at that time, internet was now coming in. So it was trying to work with governance institutions in Ghana to get them email addresses, or for them to use, electronic media. So working with Parliament, working with the EC, we were now going to hold some of our key elections. So trying to see how we could make the EC, have access to internet and email and scan and all that. So I applied for that position, which was a coordinator role, and I was successful. So after doing that for a couple of years, I sort of became very interested in this development space, and then I tended to move on. So by the time I left USAID, I was the deputy team leader for a governance portfolio. They called it governance, but it had education as part of it. So that portfolio looked at transparency and accountable governance, but it's also looked at civic education. It's also looked at how education influences people's choice in governance and all that. So my real trajectory to this role, or to this profession, I must say, comes from my work with USAID.
That is really, really interesting, and I think I'm kind of amazed that this journey has been going in from your first degree in administration, working in an admin role, and gradually gaining interest in the development space, exploring opportunities, going for that, but also rising through the ranks from an admin officer who had not been trained in development to actually mastering your role and rising to deputy team lead under the governance portfolio. I think that is an impressive trajectory, and it's really inspiring. And thank you so much for sharing this. And one more thing I want to learn, before we go into the discussion on community engagement, is across these last 2 decades, obviously you've done amazing work with USAID, other organizations, you've done some consulting with different organizations. What would you say is your proudest, if there's no one, maybe if you can mention one, maybe you're free to mention two, but what are some of your proudest accomplishments or the proudest work along the line?
Thanks, Senyo. I mean, I think this is, I shouldn't say a difficult question, but it's an interesting question because I don't think I've actually sat down to look at it in that regard in terms of the project. But I think that what puts us, I am quite a passionate person, as you probably have realized when you meet me. I'm always high energy, which sometimes is not all too good. But I should say that what makes me happy or proud is when I actually at the community level engaging with, the people that we're working to help improve their lives. And so a lot of my work has been really focused on aspects of community engagement, whether it is women empowerment, whether it is working with school children, whether it's working with young people. A lot of my work, my career has been really being down there, if I should use that word, being where the action is. That's what I want to say, being where the action, because I think that brings me a lot of joy. But in terms of looking at my career and looking at maybe, if I should say, one of the proudest moments is my job at VSO, Volunteering Services Overseas, was a job that sort of ticked all the boxes for me as a person. And my role was really, yes, it was in the education space, but really engaging with volunteers who were working to help improve the lives of others. So it ticked the boxes of, young people, it ticked the boxes of volunteerism, and also ticked my passion as in terms of actually seeing smiles on people's faces in the communities in which we worked. And so that, I'll say, was a proud moment. I also did a project. It was called the Ghana Water and Sanitation Project, GWASH, which maybe the name has veered a bit from education. But the project was encouraging, this was way before COVID, it was encouraging children in schools, sanitation in schools. So one, helping to build sanitation facilities in public schools in Ghana. Two, helping to set up hand washing facilities. And three, the most important, the behavior change of working with the children to be able to understand sanitation, to wash their hands often, and then also go home and sort of inculcate that practice in their parents. This was way before COVID, so we used to have sessions where we had songs, we would sing washing of the hands, we go through the washing of the hands process with the children at the school. And it brought a lot of joy to me when you see all these children, in schools washing hands. I mean, we worked in 5 regions in Ghana and over 100 schools, public schools, where we help them to set up these hand washing facilities. Some of them, actually, we train them how to make the tippy tap. So if they didn't have a borehole or they didn't have running water, we would train them how to make, a tap dripping from a bottle, water dripping from a bottle for them to wash their hands. So those kind of, activities, I would say, have been quite passionate and interesting to me. And if you don't mind, I think one last thing I want to talk about is, I think from a personal point of view, one of the key things I've done that made me happy is I set up, I'm the co-founder of an NGO called Partnership for Volunteering and Development. And I guess you probably see where my volunteering heart is coming from. So that's also something that I've set up that makes me quite proud. Thank you.
That's interesting to hear, and obviously you've mentioned quite a few of them, because these are things that I've been passionate about. I've heard about VSO, have some friends who took part of the experience and find it really fulfilling, and so it's good to know that you are involved in that, but also the fact that it deals with young people going into rural communities and actually serving at the grassroots level, which you mentioned is something you like, aside the sanitation program as well as the volunteering. I think in all that you've cited, one key thing that occurs to me is being motivated and being inspired when you see change happening at the grassroots level. You see that the impact of your work is visible, whether it is in the life of women or children or school children. It's interesting. And you mentioned the community engagement aspect, which you really like. And that leads us to the next part of the conversation. And we hear community engagement, community involvement. I mean, this is like a huge buzzword in the development space. And anytime you're going into any space, it starts with community engagement. Now, what really does community engagement mean? That is mean going into the community, talking to the opinion leaders. Like, what does it mean when we say community engagement at its core?
Thanks, Senyo. I agree with you that community engagement probably is overused in the development space, and people tend to, even maybe just a visit to a community, they tell me, oh, I had a community engagement, so we need to really delve into it. So from where I sit, or from the thinking, or from my experience, I believe that community engagement, one, is a very powerful tool, but it is really the heart of community engagement is really the word, the engagement. And I mean, maybe engagement, you can break it down to collaborating, working with groups or working with the people who you hope to help, benefit from sometimes benefit can be termed as a word that is derogatory, but I'm using it in terms of the people you hope to be part of this change, or the people you hope that the change process will affect. And so that is what community engagement means to me. So it's not just, the usual stuff when organizations go into a community, few people are sitting together, they have a 5-minute meeting and say, oh yeah, we had an interesting community engagement. It is really working, continuous collaborating, working with them to get to the point where activities or actions that come out are not you imposing on them, but they themselves, through that interaction, several interactions with you or your team, come to the realization that indeed we need A or we need B, and this is how we can do it, or this is where we need to go together, support. So it's the reverse of, I'd say that community engagement is the reverse of you going to someone and say, hey, Senyo, I think that you need to change the way you are, doing this thing. But community engagement is rather coming to engage with you and say, hey, Senyo, you've been doing these things very well. Have you thought about the impact of this? Have you thought about doing it differently? And getting to the point where people normally call the aha moment, getting to the point where the community themselves agree, or even not agree, maybe they themselves come up with the solution and say, wait a minute, we could do this differently and get a better result. So that's, in my mind, is what community engagement. So being part of the people, collaboration, working with them, to identify the issues that affect them or their well-being, and then working with them to come up with solutions that are sustainable, letting them own the process. So that's how I would define community engagement.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I like what you said about community engagement, not just about meeting, as in you meet some people and speak to them, because a lot goes into this. Like if you walk into a community and you're thinking about community leaders in lots of rural areas, it's most likely the chief. And so if community engagement here, it's considered as okay, meeting the chief of the community and talking to him. But what you mentioned that stuck to me is the fact that this is a continuous process and not just a one-time engagement with one or two individuals. But the element of continuous also introduces a subplot of not just meeting one group of people, but possibly interacting with different sections of the community, obviously based on what you are going to do. But
exactly. And so you've picked a point. Just to say that identifying the various groups. So even let's say, for example, it's education that you are there to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that your community engagement should be targeting or focusing only stakeholders in the education space. You can go talk to the people in the health space. No, you can't. You should. You should go talk to the people in other spaces, because for all you know, whatever product, if it's education that you're trying to promote, there are aspects of it that these other groupings would bring their knowledge to it to make it better. So the idea is identify everybody in the community, no matter, yes, of course, the chief is important, but no matter how small, and identify what they bring to the table. And from there, let it be a group and a collective decision-making process. It's relationship building, as you said several times. It's not an event. It is a process. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for emphasizing that. And it reminded me of a conversation I had with my former manager, who the CEO of Edisport, working on some community engagement and interviewing people in terms of their perceptions of having a community library. And it was interesting to learn that for some sections of the community, they saw a library as something that draws a line between those who are educated and those who are not educated, such that the library is for the educated. For those of us who have not been to school, it's not our space. So I think that it's what I would call 360 engagement, such that if it is not only your beneficiaries or your target audience, you'd also want to understand what are the concerns, perceptions, and fears that other people have in order for you to manage the project, manage risks and expectations. But I think that you also mentioned the thing about ownership, which gets emphasized, and community ownership here, like you mentioned, it's you're not going into a community to say that, okay, there's this problem in the community, this is a solution. We want you to do this in order to solve the problem. And it moves from what people say development, that you do development for people, as in it's development shouldn't be something that you do to people, but something that they do for themselves, with any support that you make. And that leads to the issue about agency and how much of input and contextualization happens to the proposed solution that you have in mind. And so a lot of us go into a committee and say, okay, this is our product, this is the problem we solve, just take it and use it. But there are also debates about the level and finding the balance between the codification of organizations' approach and contextualization, and what aspects can be contextualized and what aspects need to remain codified. But I think the main thing I'm picking here is community engagement is a continuous process, not only at the beginning of the project and then you end it there, but you need to continue that process to see how perceptions are changing, how ownership and agency is playing out. So thanks for highlighting that.
Just one small example that has come to mind. When we were doing this water and sanitation project that I spoke about, one of our key things to do was helping the community site a borehole, for example. And so we had gone to communities that they had, some of them had boreholes, but were not being used. So there was, what if you go and pump, the water comes. So when in the community engagement process, we asked the question, why you have a borehole and you're still fetching from that stream, which is not hygienic? You know what the women told us? We engaged the women group. They told us that, the walk to the stream is where we do our gossip. It's where we gossip about our husbands and our children and who is not getting chop money and who is not treating well. You have cited this pump right at my door. How do I have that me time with my fellow women to gossip? So we don't use it. We still take the walk to the stream. So if there had been a good community engagement, brought these women together, at one side and teased out this information, the borehole could have been cited further from their home, so that it gives them that 5 or 10 minute walk to have their gossip, as they say, in the morning and in the evening, and they would use it. But because there wasn't effective, yes, maybe there was engagement, but it wasn't effective. And so the idea was, your water is not clean, we are bringing you clean water. They went to the chief. The chief said, I have a plot of land behind my house, put it there. Who wants to go and fetch water behind the chief's palace when they want to gossip? So just right to your point in terms of it is a process. You have to understand the people. It is a relationship building. Walk them through the process from the beginning to the end. So the final determination. Once they feel they decided where the borehole should be placed and they were part of the engagement, no one asked them to use it. They use it. They set up a scheme where they were even collecting money so that if the pump goes bad, they can fix it. And it was all their initiative.
That's interesting. I mean, one thing that comes to mind from the example you cited about the community women is managing power dynamics or power relationships. Yes. Because when you go into a community, our social structures are set up such that some people have more power than others. So in this case, it could be, this is what the assemblyman of the community, the local leader, the chief, or some committee said, this is the best place. But in the case of the well, for example, the chief does not use the well. It's back to the girls and the women. So it comes back to, I mean, you possibly would involve the chiefs and the community leaders, but when it comes to something like the siting, you want to understand the people, the actual people who use it. But the question here is, how do we find the balance in power relationships? Because when organizations go into rural communities, there is that differences in how much power they have. These organizations have like very well trained professional people who have some money, and you have the local communities who just are happy with any form of support they could receive. And so how do we have community engagement in a way that balances power relationships, and the local communities do not have to accept what organizations are providing because of the power relationship, but they are both to feel empowered to make both changes to whatever propositions there are that organizations are making.
Yeah, so thanks for that. So Senyo, you are spot on, and I think that these power dynamics, even within the community itself, if they are not handled well, they become more of a negative influence on a program or a solution than a positive influence. So to do community engagement effectively, there are participatory tools that various organizations use. But the key thing is to identify I'm using identifier twice, but to make sure that you engage every identifiable group or person. Sometimes you can find people who are not in a group. Some people term them the village drunk, or the village drug addict, or the village something. Don't overlook them. You need to identify all these various groups and engage them separately. You need to have a knowledge of the context you are going in to engage, because in certain cultures or contexts, when the men are speaking, the women don't speak. So if you call an entire community meeting, and we've had experiences previously, call an entire community meeting and you're asking questions. So what are your needs? And then you see maybe there's a women are there, they are quiet, and maybe you specifically didn't call her name. Auntie Ama, what do you have to say? She will say, oh, what my husband said, that is it. Because in that context, when the man speaks, the woman cannot speak or cannot even challenge it. So you need to first understand the dynamism and the culture of this community, and prepare you as a community facilitator. You need to be well prepared. You need to do a bit of background of the community and go in with knowledge and well prepared, so that if it's a community you need to engage the women alone, you can have a big community meeting, announce why you're there, but have smaller group sessions with the women where maybe you speak the local language. You say, hey, wait, they're young girls, and now, just women, we are just coming to gossip and all that. To break the ice, you may need to meet the youth group separately. You may need to meet the children separately. You may, even within the men, you may need to, as you say, meet those who have the money, the philanthropy or something separately, and then meet the unemployed separately. And then when you finish, you triangulate and all the information you're getting, and then have a process where you share back to them and say, look, we had this individual meeting. This is what we are hearing. Is this how you understand it? So that's why I said it's not an event. It is a process, and you may have to go 3, 4, 5 times. You may have to, Even in the women's groups, there may be a woman who is very vocal and the others are quiet. It is your duty as a facilitator to ensure that the person who is quiet and looking away, that's the person you should speak to, even if she can't speak in that setting. On your way, say, oh, let's go find food, talk to her one-on-one, because she may be timid and she may have information that can impact this work you're going to do. So it is quite a technical, you need to have the techniques. It's quite a technical thing to do and a process, and go severally triangulating the information you're getting, asking this group maybe the same questions you ask the other group. The women's group may have something else, the men's group may have something else. And after several engagements or several meetings or several getting togethers, you will see that you're developing a pattern, in terms of if it's education, you're doing health or whatever. You see a pattern developing and you follow that pattern, but always go back to the group and say, is this what you mean? Is this what you are thinking? So that they feel they are being listened to. That's where the ownership comes out. If you do one meeting and go with a notebook and write a long list and come tomorrow and say, okay, so this is what we are doing. It is Avril saying what we are doing. It is not the community. So it is a process. It is technical and may take long. I mean, that's why a lot of organizations or people cut corners, because, you can have 15 different interactions and you still haven't arrived at a concerted fee, or people are not agreeing. So it takes time, but I believe that once you take that time and do it well, and the people can see, it's building trust. They have to build trust with you, the organization or facilitator or whomever you are. They have to build that trust. And trust building is not an event. Even as a friend, yes, the first day you meet the person, you like the person, but it takes continuous engagement with the person before you get to the point where you say, okay, I can trust this guy, I can tell them my secrets, okay, I can tell them what I'm thinking. So it's similar. True. So it is a process. It is a process.
I mean, that is a really interesting point, and I'm learning that community engagement, it's complex, it's a lot of work, it's continuous, and it's not very simplistic. You don't go to a community once, engage people, and say you've done community engagement. So thanks for sharing that. Now let's bring the conversation into the school context. Now, the argument is that schools exist in a social context within a community, and so for schools to thrive, they have to receive some strong support from the community. I think for a long time, there is that dichotomy between what is a school issue and what is a community issue, especially in communities where there are not a lot of educated adults. So the school arena becomes, like I said from the sports example, the school becomes a place that is for the schooled or the educated, people who can speak English. And then outside the school, there's another environment. But while we talk about community engagement and it's important, what are the main reasons why community engagement in school management is important? Okay,
so from our thinking, we know, if you look at our settings, we know that, as you say, there are schools in communities, several schools. We believe that, if community, and in community we are looking at parents, we're looking at chiefs and community leadership, we're looking at the entirety of people in the community, so not just the chiefs and the leaders, but parents and all that. And we believe that if a community is empowered to feel that they own the school, I know the schools are owned by GES, so maybe what I'm saying is far-fetched, but that's our thinking, or that's our hypothesis. We feel that if the community is empowered to feel that they own the school, it makes a difference in how the school performs. For example, if parents understand that it's important, the school is there to, educate their children to get a better life. Even if their children will end up being farmers, they will be educated farmers, let's say, to get a better life. And the school is there to even help parents to nurture children, for example. Which parents won't want their child to go to school? if you are, a parent, you have to go to the farm. You have a young child, and if your understanding is that the school is to nurture my child, to help, to take the child off me, child care, to let my child learn, not just reading book and working maths, but all those social emotional skills. Let the child be able to learn to interact with people. Let the child learn how to build networks. Let the child learn how to build relationships. Then the mother of parents feels empowered to send their child to school. In the same vein, if there's a school in a community and the teachers are not showing up, people in GS, in the district office and all that, will probably not know that this school teachers didn't show up. It is the community in which the school is that may even meet the teacher at the market and say, hey, Madam Messi, today is Tuesday, 10 o'clock. Why are you in the market? My child is in school. Why are you not in the classroom? I mean, these are simple examples, but these are the kinds of things that a community that is involved in education understands this school belongs to us. We have the right to question the teacher who is in the market instead of being in the classroom. We have a right to ensure that the school compound is safe, it's weeded, it's not overgrown with weeds. We have the right to ensure that our children are in school and are being taught. The teacher is in the classroom, they are being taught something, they are given work. I may be illiterate, but my child comes home with a book to color. I say, Kuya, what did they give you? Oh, man, they say I should color this. Okay, I may not be in a position to even identify the color, but the fact that I ask my child, what homework do they give you, alone makes my child want to sit down and do the homework, because they know mommy may not be educated, but she's checking on me. She knows that teacher will give me work to bring and I need to do it. So I think that these are little examples, but collectively, we believe that if a community owns, and I say own advisedly because we know it's GS, but if a community believes they can have an impact in the way the school is run, then they all come together and ensure that that school doesn't fail. And that translates into improved learning outcomes for children, because children will be going to school, every parent will be sending their child to school. Every teacher who is found not in school will be questioned and probably maybe even brought to Ahimfie to say, Teacher AC, we have seen she has been selling in the market at classes hours. So, Nana, we need to institute some bylaws for teachers not to be selling. Yeah. The second aspect that even happens is that the community sometimes even provides accommodation for teachers in very, very deprived areas that teachers can't, are posted to where there's no accommodation and they have to walk or ride 5 miles and all that. Communities provide rooms. Some people may have rooms. They provide rooms in their homes for the teacher because they believe that we need the teacher to be in the school to be able to support our children. So, and then this takes the burden off the national government, because we sit down and think that the public school is for government, Abain, and so we are waiting for Abain to come and build a house for head teacher or to build a house for teacher, or we are waiting for our bank to come and weed around our school, even though our children are going there and it may be breeding snakes. But that's the mindset we need to change. And that's the mindset we believe that promotes, quality education and trickles down to improving the learning outcomes of children. Because the community, if you as a person, let's say you own a house, nobody comes to tell you that weed around your house or sweep it or mop it or make sure your house is, safe for your kids or your family members. Because you feel you own it, you feel it as a duty, even if you can't do it yourself, you look for help to help you do it. So it's that same type of mindset that we feel that once the community feels that this is not a GES in Accra school, it is us, Teacher Mante community, it is our school, it is where our children are going to, it is where when our children pass out, they can be the lawyer or the doctor or the carpenter, or even if they will be a teacher for us. So I need to ensure that the school is delivering. Then it even makes the head teachers accountable, because you see that
really interesting.
They become accountable. They become accountable because the community can question a teacher, not being vicious, but they can question a teacher and say, "Oh, teacher, today my daughter says you didn't come to class. I've met you in the market. What is happening? Is there anything I can do to support you?" So these are the antidotes that we have seen. I know that there's not a lot of evidence in terms of, I don't know if they've done some rigorous studies that sort of link community involvement or community ownership to improve learning outcomes. And I think there's yet that kind of research to be done. And hopefully with our work under the GEED lab, the Ghana Education Evidence and Data Lab, we will be able to commission such research. But there's a lot of antidote of information that sort of points to the fact that community ownership and community involvement in managing the school, not just even managing, but ensuring that, teachers and head teachers and all that are safe, have places to live and all that, supports the school. The Global Education Evidence Advisory Panel, the GEAP report, did come up with, involving communities in school management as a promising buy. It didn't look at it as a best buy. It looked at it as a promising buy. But the explanation they gave was that even though there's information that is good, there's not a cost aspect that is, they don't have any evidence in terms of cost effectiveness. Like we just spoke about, that community engagement may take you 6 months to do, and it's expensive. So there's no information in terms of how cost effective it is. But we know that when parents are involved and the community is involved, things work, at least if nothing at all. They are accountable.
That is a really interesting hypothesis to start with. But you've said a lot of interesting, insightful, somewhat controversial things that got me reflecting. But you did mention about how we get parental support for children to stay in school. And especially in rural areas, from my experience, one of the main challenges is just the level of support and care or concern that parents have for their wards being in school. And I was teaching in a part of the country that I wouldn't want to mention, where a parent walked into my class to call out their child to go to the farm with them. And for me, it was a shock. It was a shock because my assumption is every parent understands the importance of keeping their children in school. And so I felt like that was an evidence that a mother like that either is not very engaged, does not understand the benefit of being in school, or has completely lost confidence or trust in the school system having any benefit for their children. And I think this is what earlier conversations about community engagement comes in, because it would possibly allow us to understand parental values, attitudes, and behaviors, and how this influences keeping their children in school. The bit of accountability is also really important, because we know that top-down accountability mechanisms end up having negative effect on teachers' agency at the grassroots level. And so when there are people closer to the school context who are keeping an eye on teachers, there's another school I taught in, for example, where there were two particular teachers who had shops, like they were selling. So on market days, they are not going to come to school.
Exactly.
It becomes the norm that on every market day, we know these two teachers are not coming to school, and the community knows, and they are selling in the market. But this is something that maybe GES management does not know, or at the grassroots action is not being taken. But that accountability mechanisms where communities have some power authority to keep teachers or head teachers up to task becomes a little complex when they are not sanctioned or they do not have any legitimate power. So I'm thinking about, to what extent are communities empowered, or do they have grounds to hold teachers accountable when they do not have any decision-making power in terms of performance management, in terms of payments, promotion, transfer, anything? These are things that communities do not have a say. So it becomes interesting how we can get communities to understand and exercise that accountability with them. But also, one thing you said that I found interesting is how, with effective community involvement, when there are shortfalls in terms of accommodation, communities can set in. I've been a beneficiary of that, where I taught in a really rural area, and the community had accommodation put up self-sponsored for teachers who are there. And throughout my time in that community, every day I had food coming in from different sources in the community.
And you're beneficiaries.
Had to cook. And so like the community members, there's food from the chief's house, there's food from the assemblyman, and sometimes like, do I eat this? Do I not eat this? Sometimes I have to beg them to reduce a portion and all that. So it could be interesting. But one thing from there is I think that this seems to be more likely effective in a rural setting as compared to urban setting where parents may be staying far away, it may be difficult to bring people together and all of that. But it's there. I just shared some example of how I benefited from strong community engagement where like the GS will never give me accommodation or give me food, for example. But definitely. That is something that the community has taken upon itself. Is there any shining examples of successful community engagement in school management models that you want to share? And by this, I want to look at what the Jacobs Foundation is doing, what are the efforts so far, and what are some of the outcomes you are beginning to see as far as community engagement in school management is concerned.
Okay, thank you, Senyo. Before the Jacobs Foundation, there was a point I just wanted to make that, for example, and I do share your point about, because in terms of the teachers reporting to GS and, you cannot, a community cannot either sanction them or even, have any impact on their promotion. So it's sometimes difficult. But at the rural and community level, they are able to set bylaws. On this, I worked at International Cocoa Initiative, one of my many roles, and our main job was to eliminate child labor. So we worked at the community level, and what we worked with the community, and the community came up with bylaws, which is implementable and forceable at the community level. Which in those bylaws they have things like if your child is loitering around at school hours, you are sanctioned, you pay a fine, 20 cedis or something. If a teacher is selling in the market during school hours, the chief can call you and sanction you, or a letter can be written to the GS director or something like that. So they had those bylaws. So even though they cannot really, so for instance, fire a teacher or all that, they can document these things and with one voice petition either the district education office or something and say this particular teacher always sells in the market on market days, and then work on it. So I just wanted to put that out there. So it's possible, especially in the rural areas. But you're right, in the more urban areas that we are all busy, it's probably more difficult. But I think that there are other things that can be tried in the rural areas. So let me now come more to Jacobs Foundation. So based on this discussion we are having, and based on our hypothesis that community ownership or community-led, we say community-led, we don't say community ownership per se, community-led interventions in school present a positive impact that leads to learning, improved learning outcomes. I must say that Jacobs Foundation, our end goal is really to ensure that children have the tools they need, the skills they need, the learning they need to be able to thrive, in this global world we are in. So our main aim is improved learning outcomes, making children global citizens. And we look at not just literacy and numeracy, but we look at social, emotional learning, confidence, character building, you name it, all that enshrined in a child being able to thrive. So with that as our end goal, we then are looking at how do we achieve that end goal. And so we believe that, yes, the policy environment is good to have a good policy environment at the national level and all that. But we think that where the action happens, that is in the school, in the community, in the classroom, that is where we can make the most impact in changing the system and ensuring that children are getting the quality education they need. Yeah. And so we started by piloting, at that time we called the district change program. So we started by piloting in 5 districts, this community-led interventions, which what we do or what was done through, we work through NGOs, we don't implement directly, we just fund, is that the community identifies key stakeholders, which we call change leaders, including the district education team and the district education oversight team. We believe that when you are intervening in communities, it's good to build on already existing structures so that you can ensure sustainability. You don't come and bring a new structure, because then after the program or project ends, then that structure has no funding and it fizzles out. So our main focus is strengthening already existing structures at the community level to be able to do this work. And so the process is really the community coming together, led by the district education team or the district education management team, whatever structure is there, to really interrogate the education system in their district. So when we started, it is a district program. So the district can have, 50 schools or how many other schools. They look at the schools. Our children passing, they can take BEC results, for example. How are they faring in the BEC? Is it good? Is it bad? It's bad. Why is it bad? What is the... So they really do delve into the root causes and do really interrogate their education system within their district. And I think that's the first part of them trying to understand what is happening and trying to even, build in their head that we own this and we can do something about it. So there's that whole process doing that. There's also the community engagement that goes, of course, prior with it, but these are kind of some of the activities that happen. And once they do these various sessions with the various groups, including school children as well, they have a session with the school children to also ask them what is happening in your school. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you think is good? What you don't think is good? It's interesting the kind of solutions that kids can come up with when we think that children, have nothing to offer. Yeah. So they do all of that, and then they come up with, as I explained, a whole list of some of the gaps they have identified, and then there's a session that they look at what are the solutions, what do we even as a district have, because there's no money coming from government. We as a district, what do we have? What do we have that we can use to improve some of these things we've listed? And then they look at that, and then what do we not have that we need to look for outside resources? And who can we go to? Do we have some philanthropist or some, bank manager who comes from this community who we can go to? All those things, they look within themselves. And then they come up with, either an action plan or agenda. Some call it a transformation agenda, some call it different names, which identifies what is not working in our schools, why it's not working, what are the solutions, what can we do about them, and who can do it. So that's the initial process of interrogating the education system. And through all that, all that is backed by capacity building, or as you call it, community engagement, working on the mindset to see that this is for us, these are our children, this is our schools, we don't have to rely on government, what can we ourselves do, and all that. So all that process comes up with this plan on what the community or the district needs to do to be able to improve learning outcome. And it is from that plan that they identify maybe interventions that can be brought to that district to improve. And interventions, what we found is interventions that are evidence. So it's not like a guess game to say, okay, our children can read, what can we do? Let us get them newspapers. No, you have to look through what has worked in other places. If there's a reading programs, which reading programs have evidence, have been implemented. There is either research or an M&E report that shows that this reading program was implemented in Uganda or implemented in another community, and this is the impact that came from this model, and these are the steps you need to take to do that. So that's where our issue about evidence in practice comes up, because what we are looking at is, yes, every district can have a unique problem or gap they identify. But then we don't want people just to be doing trial and error. We want them to be able to look at what are some interventions that have been tested, tried, and have evidence to show the work that we can bring to this our district, which can solve this gap or problem that we have identified. So yes, there's a community, engagement, which is a big aspect of our work, but there's also the bit about actually supporting the district once they go through this whole process of interrogating their system and identify what is not working in the system, and then supporting them with either funds or models that help improve the gaps that they have identified. Mind you, what I need to stress is that we are looking at a systemic change. So we are not looking to solve problems like, oh, I need 10 desks, I need 5 books, I need pens. No, those are not issues we're looking at. We're looking at issues with the system. Okay, we should have had textbooks. They haven't come. Why hasn't the textbook come? What has caused the blockage? So it's really looking beyond as I said, the bread and butter issues, which sometimes is difficult because in these very rural schools, they need basic things like chalk or, chair, or, you know better than I do. You taught in some of these schools. So normally, when you do the first round of engagement and looking at the gaps, these are you get a list of, everything that the school needs. So you need to constantly go back and think about what's the root cause, and it's really the root cause that if you can identify the root cause and solve it, then you've changed the system. So then that problem won't keep occurring. But if you're just buying desks, every year new kids will come to the schools. Why will you get money to continue to buy the desk? Look at the root cause. Why are the allocation for the desk not coming? And what can we do to solve that? So that's in a nutshell, that's what we are looking at in terms of our community work, our community-led education systems change approach that we're implementing with the Ministry of Education.
That sounds really insightful, thinking about the process you go through, starting from engaging different sections of the community you've mentioned, but also starting with some sober reflection of what sounded like a SWOT analysis or needs.
Yes.
What are we doing well? What are the gaps?
Exactly.
What are the strengths? What are some of our opportunities? And then sort of having all the problem, then narrowing down to what problem do we think we can solve? Then what is the best way of solving this? And I really liked what you said about not being a guess game or try and error, especially when resources is involved, but we are kind of interrogating the effectiveness of whatever solution or approach that we are narrowing on, which for me sounds like a really good capacity building exercise, going through the process of identifying problems, brainstorming solutions, and narrowing down on what solutions will be most effective. And so, it sounds like building capacity of these actors to continue to brainstorm and identify solutions. Now, how do you work with the communities of these groupings through that transition between what they think is the best in their understanding, what the best approach or what the best solution, as compared to what the evidence is saying, talking about evidence in practice? How do you find that balance? Because in case the community thinks that this is what we want to do, but as an organization, you think or you assume that this may not be the best way, how do you find common ground?
Okay, thanks. So I must say that as an organization, because it's a foundation based in Zurich, we don't purport to say we have the answers to the solutions at a community level in a country like Ghana. But then we do have a hypothesis, as I indicated earlier on. So, and we work, I must say that these 5 pilots that we did, we worked through organizations. TTEL implemented in 3 districts and UNICEF implemented in 2. UNICEF is still ongoing, but the TTEL project came to an end late last year. So what the process is that it's still a facilitation. It's still very much linked to a community engagement process. So yes, you have they do the interrogation, they come up with key issues. Then there's an interrogation of that interrogation again, because then the facilitator is asking the question, ask the question again, what is the evidence backing this you have put here? So for instance, if they come up with an issue that, okay, maybe there's teacher absenteeism and that's why, teachers are not in class and kids are not learning. So that's one of the issues. Then we ask the question, why are teachers absent? Then they may say, okay, the teachers are absent because maybe the school is too far. Then you ask the question again, what's the evidence? So we keep interrogating that. Do you have evidence to show what is how many miles the teacher has to walk or cycle, for example? So we keep interrogating the issues that are highlighted in there's like 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the community's own. There are some communities that are forthcoming, there are some communities that are more laid back. So depending on the community's own energy, if I should use that word, we keep the interrogation process or the facilitation process on the key issues that can continue to be interrogated to the point where it comes to a point where they themselves realize that, we need to be addressing the root causes and we are not, putting bandage on the wound, but actually finding out what is causing this wound in the first place, so that you don't continue to get this sore or this wound on your body. So it is a continuous process. So we see it as we call it a mindset shift. So we see it as a process where we are shifting the mindset of these key education stakeholders from what they are used to, where they sit in their offices and maybe it's in the third quarter, you get an allocation from the ministry. Your first quarter allocation maybe comes in the third quarter, and you just take the money and go and buy some chairs and you come back and sit. No, we are shifting the mindset to say, as you're waiting for that third quarter money to come, what is it that you can do in your power? What do you have? What capacity do you have? So it's, as you say, a lot of capacity building, but it's capacity building on the mind for people to think differently, not just the education stakeholders, but the community, the parents, to think differently, because a parent's mind is, oh, say school, they are buying will bring teacher, buying will do that. Okay, buying is not coming. Okay, I have a farm, let me take my child to farm. But you, as a parent yourself, you also need to think differently about education and what input you can give, even to support the school that your child is attention, and how you hold the school authorities accountable. So it's really a capacity building of the mind, to shift the mind from the normal that we know, to more strategic thinking in terms of, I don't have resources, or I have only 1,000 Ghana cedis to run the school. What are the key priorities that 1,000 can do to make the difference in the child's life? Not the issue is the child. The issue is the child. It's not about making just my school look nice or me getting a promotion as a headmaster, but what can I do to improve the learning outcome of these 50 kids or 60 kids that are in my school with these limited resources? How can I draw on this community? It may be a farming community. What can we do? Can we come to the chief and say, okay, every season they should put one bag of maize for the school. We sell it and the money we use it, or even we use it in school feeding. So these are things that can be done. But because our thinking is always looking up to the national, looking up to government bringing money, or looking up to an NGO bringing money, we don't think outside the box. So a lot of this intervention is shifting that thinking outside the box, looking within yourselves, looking at you as an individual. I mean, one of the first things they do when they're training the change leaders, one of the first sessions is doing your own self-introspection. So I think there's a 2-hour session that you yourself, you look at, what do you bring to the table? What do you have that you can bring to the table? What do you have that you are not given? How can you make a difference? So you do that, and that helps you to think, change your mindset of thinking. Instead of always looking, who can give me what? You are now looking at, what can I give to somebody, or what can I give to improve this education in my community? So it's a lot of that, yes. So it's capacity building, but really working on how people are thinking and helping, the whole community to be empowered, because our thinking is that this, which is now called Communities of Excellence, I must say, we started this district change program, but the ministry has bought into it, and then the ministry has named it Communities of Excellence. So our whole idea is that this whole Community of Excellence interventions, which I've outlined, some is capacity building, mindset change, some is really supporting interventions, classroom teacher interventions, teacher motivation, and all that. We are hoping that this whole initiative will empower the community to lead a transformation process within the community, which is related to education based on evidence. So a lot of these engagements we say, for instance, if they have the meeting and they say, okay, our children are not performing, what evidence is showing? What are you looking at? Are you looking at BEC results? Are you looking at the National Standardized Test? Bring it. Let's look at it. What does it say? So at every stage of the process, the question is, where is the evidence? So we are also changing, the mindset in terms of things are not done based on, I feel this is good or I hear this is good, but it is really the evidence. What have you looked at? What is the evidence saying about the schools in your district? What is it saying about the children? And how do you use that to inform the solution that you come up with? So that I've spoken a lot, but that's what we're hoping to achieve. And just to say that it's early days yet, so we really don't have evidence to show impact. This was started about 18 months ago, so it's still early days yet. But initial monitoring and evaluation that is being done is showing us bits of, showing us some light that changes is starting to happen, especially with the way the education stakeholders at the district are thinking. In the districts we've worked, their thinking is changing. They're being more creative and innovating with things around them. They are involving parents more in terms of reviewing results and all that. They are having their meetings that GES has set up they should have, which they were not having. They were waiting for money. They are being creative and having those meetings, engaging with the community, sharing the results of exams and things with the parents and the communities, and working together to solve problems. So that's initial, anecdotal evidence we're getting. And that gives us, more in terms of more power to say, okay, we probably are on the right path. But we don't claim to have all the answers yet, but it's a work in progress.
Thank you so much, Avril. It's mind-blowing, and I'm really inspired to hear this. I feel there's a lot of creative problem solving happening here, because it's not the kind of program that you say, okay, we are providing training on pedagogical skills to teachers. We go to this school, offer that, we go to this school, offer. And this is a different kind of model where you are tailoring every solution to the context where the people on the ground, the people in the school and the community are the ones making decisions about what their problems are and what the solutions are, and they are the ones driving those solutions. And I think this is really innovative. This is really inspiring and impressive, and not a lot of organizations or programs use this model. Obviously, there is an issue of evaluating because you don't have a standardized approach where you are analyzing the particular intervention, because what a project looks like in one district or in one school may be totally different from another, and it becomes difficult to box all that together to evaluate. I was going to ask about evaluation, but like you said, you still... it's still early days, but the strategy that we developed with the Ministry of Education has some goal, which it's called the 90-90-90. So they want 90% of children to progress along the educational path. So 90% of children because they have the National Standardized Test. They are going to use that as the test to determine progress, for the kids, because all this we are doing, the end product is learning outcomes. So they are looking at 90% of children who progress at the various stages when the National Standardized Test is conducted. So at P4, 90% of children should be able to progress to, at P2, 90 should be able to progress to P3. There's a test done again at P4, 90% should progress, and then BEC, 90% to progress. So there's that sort of, measurement that we've agreed with the ministry on, and this is looking at the final product, meaning the learning outcomes. But we're also going to develop a monitoring and evaluation framework for this whole communities of excellence, which will measure the community pillar, it will measure parental involvement, and measure all those other things I spoke about, So once I think that
this is an initial conversation, and I hope, we'll be keeping in touch and looking at the progress. Maybe 2 years time, or whenever I come back and have a chat with you, I'll be able to have some evidence to show, real evidence to show impact. But yes, as I said, it's work in progress.
I mean, like you said, anecdotically, it's just amazing what changes can happen when communities are owning the process. And I feel like as a society, we have transitioned from a point where there is a gutter that is there that is causing flooding. It's the government's job. When in the past, something like community service or communal labor, I mean, the chiefs and the local leaders gather people, they put resources together, they fix it. There are places in Ghana where the community does not have a school, but they've come together to build a school and then invite government to support. And I think it's really inspiring and amazing what communities can do. But I think that over the years, there's been a mindset shift and a mindset change where every problem has to be solved by the government or the politician or the MP, and people are not thinking about themselves as people who can offer something, who have something to offer. So I think having a model where there are change leaders at the community level that involves parents, learners, teachers who have solutions in their hands to offer, it's really inspiring. I mean, this conversation has been really insightful, but I see we are going over time, so we may need to.
I talk a lot. Sorry.
Quickly. I mean, it's been amazing and hearing about this, but I'm also hoping that this is a model that can be replicated once we begin to see that it's working. And in 2021, when I wanted to work with Education Partnerships Group, I proposed a similar thing. Working.
Oh, really?
Yes, yeah, I still have the proposals. I work on a proposal to have this done, led by teachers. I've forgotten the name I called it, but it was like small groups, they solving problems, but linked to results-based finance. So they set goals for themselves, and anytime they meet those goals, they unlock additional financing, including promotion for the teachers. So I think it's interesting to see that. It will
be interesting to look at that proposal, if you don't mind, because currently we're working on setting up a funding, a pool funding, we call it the co-funding mechanism with the government of Ghana, which we're drawing money from the Global Partnership for Education and then Jacobs Foundation. And Jacobs Foundation is bringing in some private sector funding from some of the chocolate and cocoa companies like the Nestle's and so on to set up this fund to scale up this kind of community-led model. And that's what we are working on currently. So we are really in the initial phase of setting up the fund. We've been able to do the fundraising and get the interest that we need, but it's now at the point of developing a program and implementation and all that. So it'll be quite interesting to read your, if you don't mind, your proposal in terms of, because we've been talking about how do we institutionalize this community-led approach. Do we need to set up a group at the community level? Do we need to use teachers? Will the district education office or team be able to, manage it? We are looking at sustainability. We are looking at how GS or whomever can sustain this. So, I mean, we need some answers. So we're good to.
Sure. I wouldn't say have the answers, but I'll be very happy to contribute to that. I'm also happy to share my proposal on this. I think I called it the TALOP program.
Oh, I see. Wow.
Something related to teachers and accountable teachers driving learning outcomes project, something like that. So I'll look through my files and then share that as well. And like I said, very happy to have conversations around it, because I strongly identify with this model of grassroots-led implementation, people brainstorming, and those closer to the problem understand and are more passionate about it. So
yes,
I would say thank you so much for
thank you
to have this conversation. And we have an audience base of over 2,200 people listening across over 79 countries. And so people are going to be curious and are interested. And so the last thing would be, if anyone is curious and wants to read more about this project or want to learn more, what are some resources or pointers or website you can point people to who would be interested in learning or reading more about this project?
Oh, thank you. Yes, they can visit the Jacobs Foundation website. It's www.jacobsfoundation.org, or just type in Jacobs Foundation. I must say that this similar model is being replicated in 4 countries: Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Colombia, and Switzerland itself. And depending on the context, it may be a bit different. So there are lots of resources on the Jacobs Foundation website that they can read. They can also, you can share my email address. If there are questions specific to the Ghana program or to what we're doing in Ghana.
Share your email address.
Yes, I'll share it. It's very long. It's Avril, Avril, .Jacobs Foundation as one word. So it's JACOBSFOUNDATION. Jacobs Foundation Ghana. So GHANA @gmail.com. So it's my first name, Avril, .Jacobs Foundation Ghana as one word @gmail.com. So you can drop me a line, and I'm happy to engage one-on-one with you or send you whatever other further documents that are shareable that I have. Because we have the strategy for the communities of excellence. That is a public document available for anyone who's really interested. Yes. So and even you, Senyo yourself, if you want to at some point in time have a follow-on discussion, because there are quite other programs that Jacobs is doing. We're doing the Ed Lab, the GID Lab, and then we're doing this funding mechanism. So if you want to delve deeper into focusing on Jacobs' work in Ghana, I'm available to have that conversation as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our audience as well for staying with us through this interesting conversation. As we heard from Avril, you can read more from the Jacobs Foundation website, which is www.jacobsfoundation.org. And you could also follow up with Avril as well. We'll share the website in the show notes as well. Until next time, you've been listening to the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Senyo Tettegah, and thank you for doing the listening. Until the next episode. Bye.